Yikes. Okay. I like how you could just press U, and it'll take you to YouTube. All right. Well, that was an oopsie. That's okay, though. Oopsies happen. I generally do think that people have an interest in this kind of content. Survival tech is kind of, I even like to look at those really bad privacy phones that keep popping up. Free owned internal comms. Metastastics is okay. I don't think it's going to replace. Where were we? There we go. I think these are interesting.
In this video, I'm going to be diving into my DIY ghost computer projects. Not just the builds that worked, but we're going to go over the ones that exposed real problems that...
I mean, the real problems is OPSEC. If you have bad OPSEC, it doesn't matter what's your... It doesn't really matter what your... what's the word I'm looking for? What your hardware is, or what encryption you use. OPSEC is king. It's the best tool.
2026. The unfortunate truth is that privacy is almost impossible, but that does not mean that we should stop trying.
I agree that we shouldn't stop trying too either.
We'll talk about vulnerabilities most people ignore, the limits of software-based privacy, and why hardware always becomes the final battleground. I will also be sharing ideas for future ghost projects and experimental builds that push this concept further. I want people to take these concepts, break them, improve them, and build something better. This video is about education, experimentation, and safety. And maybe today what you believe feels right. But when rules change, beliefs do not protect you anymore. Nothing announces the end of freedom. You just wake up one day without it. This video is for educational purposes only. Could not condone any illegal activity.
The editing is always funny.
Also, before we jump into the video, another quick disclaimer. I do not know everything. This is my third ghost computer video. The whole point of the series is learning and sharing what I discovered along the way. With that said, let's get into it. When people talk about privacy, it's almost always focused on software, apps, operating systems, encryption, VPNs. But the truth is, the biggest threat to your privacy is not software. It's hardware. Your computer does not start with your operating system.
Yeah, I mean, if your hardware isn't secure, that is true. But what the real problem is like, if you want secured hardware, how do you trust it? Like, how do you trust the USB drive at that point? Are you like, you know what I mean? Like, what level do you like? You're like, all right, I gotta. What level do you be like? Are you gonna be like, okay, you know, how do I know my USB drive hasn't been compromised? How do I know my motherboard hasn't been compromised or my CPU? I mean, it's some of it gets very theatrical, is what I would say. Like a lot of people point to Intel management system and think that that's like the core demon, but in reality, it's a tool that's just used that can be exploited. I mean, removing it at a certain threat model is probably good. I wouldn't say not removing it is good. But another thing, I also think people don't realize that you can do all these things. You can remove all these attack surfaces, and that's probably good in its like nature. But the issue with it is your metadata leaking cannot be redacted or removed. Like your inability to understand good OPSEC and understanding that encryption actually does have a purpose. If it is encrypted and you have good OPSEC, it's better than it being unencrypted and having good OPSEC. So your tools kind of have to like work with each other. Not one tool has to be I think people put a lot of their energy to the wrong things. I mean, encrypting your drive, you should just do that because if someone steals your laptop, then you're kind of fucked. So you should always encrypt your drive. I don't know.
It starts with firmware. It starts with chips that you cannot see, cannot inspect, and cannot turn off. Modern computers are filled with components that have their own processors, their own firmware, and their own rules. Network cards, CPUs, management engines, radio controllers all run code you never approved and cannot audit. It doesn't matter if you run privacy-focused OSs, encrypt everything, air-gap your systems. If the hardware can't be trusted, the system can't be trusted. And when you connect that hardware to the internet, the risk multiplies instantly. A perfect example of this would be the Intel Management Engine. It is a separate system built into most Intel CPUs. It is not part of your operating system. It runs its own firmware, has its own processor. It starts before your computer even boots. This has deep access to system memory, hardware, and networking, and it cannot be fully disabled by the user. Intel says it exists for things like remote management and security features, but because it is closed source, it runs below the OS. Users have no way to audit.
I mean, it is kind of. I mean, that is the purpose of it. Does that mean that it can't be exploited? Of course not.
What it actually is doing. This is just one of the examples of why ghost computer builds kind of work around not trusting hardware. But there's another issue when it comes to networking, because this is where privacy really starts to break down. Your ISP is the main gatekeeper of your internet traffic. Every single packet of data going in and out of your home's connection passes through them first. No matter how careful you are, no matter what operating system you use, no matter how locked down your hardware is, VPNs and proxies help, but they do not make you invisible. Your ISP can see when you're online, how often you connect, how much data you use, where traffic is going at a high level, patterns in your behavior over time. Even if they cannot read the contents, metadata alone is enough to build a profile. That profile grows quietly in the background. If you use Tor to access the dark web, your ISP may not see what you are doing there, but they absolutely know that you're using Tor. That alone can be logged, flagged, or reported.
I'm pretty sure that Bridges solves this. Interesting. I mean, I would never do this at home, in general, you know? You're using the internet. It's impossible for them not to see that you're using the internet. But what are you trying to hide the destination of your connection? Because it's true. Yeah, I think Bridges was a censorship thing. I thought it was, you know.
Later. On top of that, the Tor network works by routing your traffic from multiple vendor-run nodes. You do not know who operates those nodes, where they are located, or what their motives are. The design reduces trust in any single party, but it does not remove risk entirely. The key takeaway is this: someone always controls the network that you're using, whether it's your ISP or someone else's connection. Once your traffic leaves your device, it is no longer under your control. That is why hardware and connectivity are the two biggest privacy problems. This is not about paranoia. It's about understanding where control actually exists. Even the way you buy a computer can compromise your privacy. When you buy a computer online or from a major retailer, the purchase creates a trail. Your name, your payment method, shipping address, IP address, and the exact serial number of the machine are all locked. That serial number is permanently tied to the hardware. Before you can turn it on, the computer already has an identity linked to you. That is why people who care about privacy often look at third-party options instead. Yard sales, garage sales, flea markets, old office cleanouts, buying used parts, and Frankensteining them together is a better option. Older machines that have changed hands multiple times are harder to tie back to one person. Mixing parts from different computers breaks that clean ownership. That is how people end up building burner machines, not invisible, but less directly connected to a real identity from the start. Even then,
I mean, yeah, you can just pay for it in cash. I don't think you got to really think about it beyond that.
and nothing is perfect. You do not know if the Ring doorbell caught the sale. You do not know who logged the transaction. You do not know the full history of the hardware itself. That is the reality. Privacy does not start when you install an operating system. It starts when you acquire the hardware. Every decision before that point already shapes your risk. That is why.
Even third-party computers come out because unknown history, firmware might be modified. Yeah. Hidden persistent can survive swaps. Even if you reinstall the OS, the firmware remains embedded. A clean drive does not mean a clean device. Yeah, I mean, you would just buy a hard drive yourself, and then, I guess, do it like that. I do think that I'm pretty sure if you buy one, so say hypothetically someone buys a Nova Custom laptop from them and you pay them an arrow, there's no linking to you, and you can, again, I actually go with the premise you should send it to your house, because the thing is, if you send it to, this sounds kind of crazy, but you can put whatever name you want. That's the point. If you send it to, say, an access point or another facility, you're going to have to show your ID. Now, you can send it to your friend's house, but then now you have to trust your friend. The least amount of trust is some random fucking, carrier driver showing up, handing it to you, not caring, moving on. And some things don't require a signature. But if you send it to another facility where you have to pick it up, you're going to have to give your ID. You're going to have to identify yourself, and they might even log it. So my suggestion, crazy, is to actually purchase these parts using Monero or cash if they allow it, or prepaid debit cards, and just have it sent to your house. Or the post office is kind of retarded too. I think the best option is just send it to your residence, because it creates something called plausible deniability. If a package shows up and they want to tie it to you, and it's all you have to do is say, I didn't order that. There's no proof. There's no receipt. There's no account. You just need to pick privacy-respecting companies. That's it. I mean, that's kind of like the easiest way to do it. Again, people overcomplicate and overthink a lot of very simple, nuanced things. Lying is free. It's not complicated. It's not required, as long as it's not required, and as long as you know there is a risk. If something breaks, like a warranty might be an issue, but if you want to go a step further, you can just keep your purchase history within a period of time, like short or something like that. Keep maybe the burner email, whatever. If you keep those things, you're pretty solid in being like, hey, I purchased this. Here's my information. Here's my order number. Here's proof that I purchased this to a certain degree. It's a little bit more difficult when you do it with Monero, because then they're entrusting that this isn't someone that just hijacked like your account and just found this and blah blah blah, whatever. I've purchased a ton of stuff with Monero and have had always a very decent experience when something goes wrong. But I do it immediately. It's time sensitive, so I try to make it so it doesn't look like it's very suspicious. Updating your software and stuff, that's pretty important. It's not. I think there are plenty of people out there that have way higher threat models than me, and other people on the internet, and they do relatively fine acting on the internet, probably just sitting on like a MacBook somewhere, and they probably have like the government after them, and they're like sitting in like Tor or something. At least they're sitting on like Dread and talking shit. I think actually there's a few things that people should know. I would say know your laws of your country and what protections you have. Like, know your rights. Just because you're doing something doesn't mean it's illegal. And just because you get suspected of a crime doesn't mean you did a crime. That's my general take on that. And wow, that's scary. So I generally tell people in hindsight, your best option is to actually just lie, and use Tails as its intentions. Buzzkill is a pretty good like tool that will just rip it out, and Tails runs everything from RAM. I don't think you have to replace the RAM, or throw it out or anything. Pretty sure it doesn't save anything to it, especially if it boots it. Because I've seen videos of law enforcement like capturing people that use Tails and have accidentally unplugged it and they didn't have anything. First rule: shut the fuck up. Never admit. Plausible deniability again. Bro, with RAM prices, how there's no way. That's funny. Tell these people about Palantir. I think there's a lot of schizophrenic people in this space, or trolls. I do like comments, though. I need 4 gigs of RAM, a laptop, USB sound. I have a Raspberry Pi that doesn't work with my old smartphone, so okay. And stripping out all these things isn't always, because you eventually maybe have to connect a microphone or something or a camera to your said device. Could be compromised, not even knowing. It could just wait for that signal, and cold attacks on RAM only work for a short time after the power is removed. This is the order of a low signal digital number of minutes, and relies extremely specialized hardware to. Yeah, that's true. The execution attack relies on chilling the RAM. Yeah, cold boot attacks. I don't think that they're not. I would say even dumb phones are worse, so I wouldn't use that. I just want to see what people's thoughts are. Let me get some more water. I would say that it's very difficult. I would say it is bad to love the hard stuff. Let's see what this guy's. Okay. So a dumb phone, that's retarded. Unencrypted messaging, A. You can still be tracked, 100%. It's called cellular triangulation. If it's not 4G or 5G, even worse. 5G does have some potential privacy advantages over 4G, definitely over 3G, definitely over 2G. This is why what a Stingray does. Well, they want to take your signal and downgrade it to 2G. So if your shit's downgrading to 2G in a metropolitan modern area, they're probably going to do a downgrade attack to decrypt essentially all your messages, everything, your calls. Because 2G has no encryption, if I remember, or it's very weak. Countryside doesn't really matter where you fucking live. That's retarded. And baseline compass GPS. I mean, that's good advice. Like you having like compass GPS, like offline GPS is good. I mean, you can just use like modern offline maps on your phone if you have a smartphone. I would say Graphene OS would be a better option. Mint. I mean, it's a telecom provider. They don't care. But no identifiable information. Older cars, Ford MK2, for example. Older car does. I mean, you can still be tracked with your car. You live in America. You have a license plate. They know where you live. Doesn't really matter. Fortified internet against data tracking ads. Modern browser. I don't know what fortified internet means. Just run Brave, ad blocker. VPN's fine. Tor for anything like super serious. Tons of books. This is just him trying to be a performative male, or her, performative woman. If doing something shady, buy a spare laptop, equip it with Tails, and use public Wi-Fi. Preferably for parks. Download content, save video files. You see, it might have a homing beacon if you're online. Sends out to your location. Watch out for. So this can be just mitigated with danger zone. You can actually just use Hunix for this. Seems like a Hunix situation, but if there's no way to home you beacon you if you're on. I mean, like see your location. There is ways to like triangulate you through Wi-Fi, but you would have to be doing something very fucked up. By the way, read a book or two about digital forensics. Look up Facility Academy syllabus for the newest info. They're pre-made Linux distros, which contains all the necessary kits and salvaging dicks yourself. Learn certain wipe nuking commands by heart. It depends, actually. Hard drives you can wipe pretty well. Mainly just destroy them too, like the physical ones. But SSDs are a different story. There's ways to recover. The only thing you need to use is the firmware. The firmware that takes SSDs and NVE drives, they have generally firmware in there that will wipe it securely, and then you can just break it or something if you're that worried. Or encrypt the drive and throw the key away. Like just do a really long key, like something you can't even think about, like the longest key in history, and throw it out. Forget about it, kind of thing. Love the hard stuff. Ping links. Ghost the Go. It's funny when people use Guy Fawkes for everything. I think we gotta call it Ghostbusters. Big talk for someone who shows ChatGPT logs on screen. Short answer, yes. You could absolutely start a computer company to fix these problems. But it would look like a normal PC brand. It would be closer to a hardware research lab, limited by manufacturers. The main issue is this already kind of exists. Nova Custom is they allow you to get core boot. which is a more open source firmware, and you can disable they disable Intel Management Engine, and also you can go a step further with something like a Trusted Platform Module, TPM, Trusted Platform Module, where you have like a root of trust. You will have to pay for it, but you can also pay $0 a month, guys. You can also pay for tamper-resistant screws if you're that worried. Essentially, it ships with Dash Euro. Dash Euro. How to stop Windows from spying on you? I can tell you Jay's 2 cents. You quite literally just install Linux, but then you have Linux spy on you. I condone illegal activity because we live in our criminal system. It's funny. Back in the late 2000s, I would run a Mac spoofer. I figured running a Mac spoofer was the next best thing I could do to hide myself. Mac randomization is... Graphene OS does it pretty well, but there's like other systems that also do this. Kick Secure, I believe, does it. Unix does it. It's not like one of those things that, unless you do something where it warrants like, let's looking for this. Obviously, leaving little to no traces. Kind of the best option, but not always the most transparent way. There's not really a transparent way to get to it. Interesting. I'll have to look at that. And even furthermore, you're not competing with Apple Dove framework. Well, there are security features you can add. You can just do this yourself. Intel Management System can be removed depending on the vendor. And then why would you transfer all your trust to, I mean, if this is your thought process, this is just a slight criticism. Why would you trust this person? Where's your chain of trust? How do you know that they don't put malware at the... How do you know that malware can't get injected at the factory line? Where are they getting their software? Ken Thompson showed that like you can backdoor C and no one would ever know. You can backdoor a compiler. And if you look at Superfish is another thing that happened in the early 2000s where there was a backdoor built into Lenovo laptops. I would call it a supply chain attack. That's the word I'm looking for. A supply chain attack where they can kind of like fuck you in between. You would never know. So there's going to be a level of trust you have to give, but yeah, I mean, no hate, but it's true. I mean, you can do these things yourself, and I would say that's a lot of words, man. That's a really long. Well, there's I mean, these don't... There is completely anonymous, just get off the internet. I mean, that does exist. There is untraceable. 3D print it yourself, man. All the components. Yeah, this seems very schizophrenic writing. And the thing is, if you're a business, if you actually run a business that's like that, you're going to have to comply with the law. That's the difference. So if something illegal comes up, someone bad, you know, unless you have like ways to like where you don't have to hold the retentions or whatever. I mean, depending on what state or country you live in. Supply chain anonymity. Why would you want supply chain anonymity? Why wouldn't you want to know who's supplying your vendor stuff? No Wi-Fi firmware present. I don't even know. There is free. Always anime fanboys. There is proprietary, less and free, blob-free Wi-Fi cards. I have one. They're not great. They exist, but they're not great. For a reason. That's just the thing. No warranty linkage. I mean, warranty linkage doesn't mean shit. Third-party bulk part. The problem is you have to get unless you do everything yourself, you have to get third-party. You have to get third-party. Radio emissions are fingerprintable? Yeah, no shit. VPN uses as well towards whatever. I can't even think about the most free Wi-Fi card, but they're very expensive, probably because I'm not entirely not entirely sure about how Wi-Fi proprietary licensing and software works in Wi-Fi, but they do make blob-free ones. This is not a mass market. Worse UX, worse performance, worse convenience. You cannot run this like a normal computer. Damn, I'm stoned. I wish I was. You can't run Tails through a VM. This would actually, it's not even allowed. It's illegal. I do think a lot of this, like, people posting on YouTube, they're like, I'm going to teach you how to be untraceable. It's always the same stuff, too. I can't stand watching 75% of YouTube videos, not because they use AI scripted videos like you do. I don't care what the content is. I mean, sure. I condone illegal activity. You cannot be private in a world you did not create. That's kind of gay. You should really pair encryption with these concepts, especially dual encryption. Dual encryption. I remember this. This is kind of a misleading title, though. Your phone doesn't have to do anything with a Stingray. I mean, misleading is one thing, but just... I'm actually watching this on a framework. That's based. Working IT networking and just, like, slowly watching fucking everything become a tool to track people cars. Yeah, working in IT doesn't mean anything. You can work in IT and still be very oblivious to this. Oh, based. Oh, even more based. Real schizo hours, true. Oh man, the guy's wearing gloves in the video, but when he lifts the glass panel, you can clearly see his fingerprints. Of course, nowadays it's more important than ever to... That's just thinking too much. I'd like to see it, or it can rip data from a VHS. Probably. Maybe I'm missing something, but isn't System D a security nightmare? It is! System D hate. I get that everything starts with the hardware, but software must be consideration too. What are the use cases for these ghost machines? Safe networking. Well, actually, if your firmware isn't secure and your hardware isn't secure and you're not getting like firmware updates, it doesn't matter how many different components you put. If you get and how much you erase something, if you're so a good example of this is the guy that they caught from Facebook from a vulnerability they found in VLC media player that helped the FBI catch a really bad person. I'm pretty sure they did his camera or something, but they probably could have found him other ways. I mean, I bought a mini computer from Amazon before I installed anything. I turned things off in the BIOS having to do with Windows. Placed a pair of new MVE and new RAM using the RAM doesn't really matter. And then installed a Linux USB drive. Changed to Brave browser. Stripped the bulk of unneeded software. Installed my favorites. Eventually playing. But did you do it from your house? And you ordered it from Amazon? You're ruined. Framework has a factory backdoor. Don't get those. I mean, that's probably not true. Going ghost mode means only using cash. I mean, sure. Only being paid in cash, not having a phone, no internet. Yeah, that's okay. You're crazy. You're too deep in a niche. You're paranoid. People talking about online privacy security get so fixated on the software, yet you give no thought in the hardware. I think that's kind of true. Hell, Discord is what scammers and hackers are using in people's computers. Something about Jews. I'm sure everyone here can see this extremely performative with all the hacker imagery and UV lights. Yeah, your threat model is the most important too. You seem to be plugged in software. Just go buy parts from stuff. Yeah, I mean you can just build this yourself technically, but please reconsider using HDR. McAfee made hardware solution, so they killed him. What? This is excessive. There's a reason. Maybe I should continue to watch. It's always interesting to see.
The buying process matters more than most people realize. Now, with everything said, let's get into the ghost computer build. All right, so I'm going to be labeling all these projects different names to help differentiate from them. So this is called the ghost project. So this one is just an old computer.
No hard drive runs entirely from a USB stick. Removable RAM can be discarded after use. I don't think there can anything be even recovered from RAM once it's booted. I'm also SANS. I do love SANS. SANS.org is. These guys are fucking goated. Is it possible for RAM to retain any data after power is removed? I don't mean within a few minutes, such as a cold boot attack, but rather in 24 hours plus. Working with classified system, the policy always seems to treat RAM as the same as disk. It must be removed and disposed of according to classification. Is this a myth? This 2013 article analysis retains retention time for several DRAM chips among relevant information. One menu lists the following. Retention may depend a lot on things, including the values of the neighboring bits. A DRAM bit is a potential well, and it loses its contents by moving charges from or into neighboring areas. So whether there's room in these neighbors matters. Temperature is very important for retention time, which is why cold boot techs insist on cold. If you plunge the machine in liquid nitrogen, you can keep these charges in place for statically longer. At room temperature, typically the retention is counted in milliseconds, at best a few seconds, and more importantly, the discharge is exponentially in its nature. It goes in like ECT for some consistency and could be expected. Capacitors also work that way. So the remaining charge after 2 minutes will be half that 1 minute, and after 10 minutes you are down to thousands of internal charge. After 20 minutes, a millionth. After 30, a billionth. To sum up, 24 hours, forget it. You won't find meaningful data in DRAM. That has been kept unpowered at room temperature after 24 hours, even in the room is, say, Canada. Interesting. RAM is an interesting thing, attack vector. This is for DRAM, where its sorted bits can be envisioned in a charged capacitor. This is the kind of RAM commonly found in PC for the last 20 years. There's also exists is called SRAM, where each bit is stored in the current state, and bitsable circuits that consist of 6 transistors. SRAM is substantially faster than DRAM. It is a lot more expensive in PC, and SRAM is used for caching, usually integrated into the CPU. Without power, SRAM loses any traces of its content within microseconds. There are some stories about bits being burned into RAM where the same value is stored for a long time in a specific emplacement in a chip. To the best of my knowledge, these stories are exactly that, stories. They come from thought by analogy, or people who think RAM in the same way they think about CRT displays, which could have a quote-unquote burn effect. Hence the development of screensavers. I didn't know that. I'm not aware of any cases where stories were ever substantiated, but if fears and doubts are powerful forces, they can always do us dispel. That's true. Always be somewhat skeptical. So maybe and I'm not just harking on the guy for saying throw away RAM. I'm just wondering. I remember coming across a cold boot text like forever ago, like on the internet. I was like, wow, that's so fucking cool. And it probably is, in theory, very possible to obtain sexy government secrets in order to get to this. But again, it's a waste of energy to focus on the wrong parts, because then you could be focusing on the right bits. Pun intended. In theory, any device can store anything because it is spaced. It is spec'd to meet the interface, not spec'd for its implementation. Realistically speaking, the answer is more murky. This, by the way, is where SSDs get so interesting, because there's no acceptable way to tell a SATA SSD to wipe everything. There's no way that is reliable and trustworthy, at least. That's true. For understand that with any classified hardware, one has declassified instructions to declassify that hardware after it's no longer needed. These typically come in the form of a letter from the vendor indicating that the operations must be taken from the vendor. The best way to actually probably wipe SSDs, again, back to encrypt the entire disk, and then after you encrypt the entire disk, you essentially do whatever the vendor says. The vendors generally, most vendors have firmware that you can go use, and that should, in theory, wipe out your SSD. If you're very paranoid, you can just crush it a lot to its core until it's powdered or whatever. If a server fails, if depletion, it might be cheaper to just throw it away. Okay. No, the UK may differ. Seems to be simpler. Okay. In theory, data can be removed as an individual bits. Bit probabilities, i.e. 62% one, measuring at time is going to. This was feasible up to about 256 megabytes of RAM, but the newer geometries was small. The number of feasible. Okay. A RAM is a set of transistors and capacitors. Transistors are usually amplified electrical signals, where the capacitors are stored properly, set the data temporarily. The information stored such cannot be available even after a few 5 approximately minutes after the power it off. So, okay. How does Tails perform disk management? Tails, which stands for the amnesia, that's very interesting information. There's probably maybe a small attack surface. It's probably like so minute that you really shouldn't worry about it as long as you run buzzkill. I would say that the disk might be ignored. You might not even need. You might not even need. What's the word I'm looking for? Like to worry about the hard drive being there or not. Okay. So Tails, which stands for the Amnesic Incognito Live System, is a security-focused operating system that is designed to prevent privacy and preserve privacy and anonymity. It's operating primarily from a live USB drive or a DVD, ensuring that no data is written to the host computer's hard drive, thus enhancing the security and privacy. In terms of disk management, Tails does not perform traditional disk management tasks such as partitioning, formatting, or defragmentation on the host system's hard drive. Instead, it focuses on managing its own live environment, ensuring that all activities are conducted within the boundaries of the live media. This approach prevents any traces of users from being left on the host system. For example, when you boot into Tails, it loads everything that it needs into RAM from the live USB or DVD. Any changes that you make during your session, such as creating documents, or browsing the internet, are stored in RAM and are lost when you shut down Tails, unless you explicitly save the data to an external drive. If you're looking for a cloud-based solution, thank you for going into that. That's weird. Sans their training's very expensive, but these motherfuckers cooking. If you had an opportunity to like go listen to these people talk for free, do it. Where their summits at? They're very smart people. Very cool. Very based, actually. Just listening to these motherfuckers talk. Their certifications are fucking expensive, though. They're like a couple. I think they're up to like 20 grand or something, maybe 10, 15, 5,000, 7,000. They're expensive. I forget. Ooh. I know it's something. $7,000. The trick is to get someone else to pay for it. Motherfucker. These prices. Oh, damn. Ooh. Wants me to download it. This is from 2025. We can use something called this. Damn it. All right. Before we download that file that could be malware. Actually, where is Transquo? The more based version. The more based version. Of Debian. Well, Ubuntu. Oh yeah, this is the one where I can't fucking what is it? So danger zone is actually a pretty good tool to have, especially if you're danger zone. So if you ever want to like open up PDF files, documents, or anything, Danger Zone is pretty based, pretty cool. All right, cool. So just want to do that. Trench coat is actually cool. I would use this as my daily if I were to go back to Debian. Oh, that's what it is. The fuck? Damn. God, Maybe it's because I'm on the GNU version. Let's try it again. What was that command? Fix. I think it's something. There we go. Man, I hate Ubuntu. Maybe if I reboot it. Shit is taking. Ooh. That's not good. It might be because it's transqual. Or I might be retarded. Right, do it this way. Let's see if Ubuntu plays nice now. fucking Ubuntu. Never. I need to figure out how to see boxes work. Boxes never works. Yeah, sorry. We'll just do this. Tails into work. Another tool safeguard. Okay, there we go. Okay. Done reading the internet. Using Tails for rotates privacy operating systems. We're taking another Tails. Okay. Maybe more. Uh-oh. A little. Let's see more of this.
You're able to remove the RAM from, and you're going to be using a Tails bootable drive to actually use the computer. A Tails bootable drive is a USB that runs a privacy-focused operating system called Tails. Instead of installing an OS on your computer, you plug in a USB flash drive and boot directly from it. When the computer starts, it loads Tails into temporary memory, or otherwise known as the RAM, and it does not rely on the internal hard drive unless you explicitly allow. Tails is designed to leave no trace behind. By default, it does not save files, history, or logs to the computer you are using. When it shuts down, everything in the memory is wiped. And a little disclaimer there, you have to make sure you fully shut it down properly for it to do that, so it can overwrite the memory. If you unplug it like I do in one of my videos, it doesn't write over that RAM. For anyone that remembers VHS tapes, it's like when you tape over a tape watching a football game or something, like that's what you're doing. Tails does not magically make you anonymous. It still runs on the same hardware, it uses the same network connection, and is subject to the same risk as the firmware in the ISP level. Tails is best thought as a containment tool. It reduces software-based risks, but it cannot fix hardware trust or network level exposure. Now, if you want to set up a Tails drive yourself, I have videos on my channel designated to showing you how to do that. It's a very simple process. I'll leave a link in the description for that. I've also used Tails for other projects. I've used it for the Ghost Drive video. That's something really cool that you can have the Ghost Burner Drive set up. I've also used Tails to break into a computer and also steal files. I'll leave that video in the description. And I find Tails to be the best way to access the dark web without having to change your normal computer stuff. So you don't have to worry about adding stuff to your computer. If you just plug in Tails, you have access to the dark web and also Onion Share, which is a really nice tool to have. And once you're done doing what you need to do, you unplug the drive and your computer goes back to normal. When it comes to hardware, the best hardware you can get is used hardware for this. I don't recommend buying anything new, but if you have to buy something new, try to buy something with a removable RAM because Tails is also susceptible to cold boot attacks. And the idea is to destroy the RAM every time you use a computer and install new RAM. So you have a Tails computer with removable.
I wonder if it really is, though. Yeah, I've seen him before, too. I mean, he says for educational purposes. The thing is, I'm not saying he's wrong about anything, but if you're not actually going in and doing some form of forensic analysis to understand if I don't think it is. This is why Elliot and Mr. Robot destroyed his RAM and SIM cards. Well, that doesn't really matter. I mean, the SIM card still logged your location. And depending on what jurisdiction you're in, they can just do a correlation. Like, cool, you destroyed the phone. You're wrong, sir. Wait, what am I wrong about? The SIM card still logs, not the SIM card itself, but the company still logs all your locations that you went to. Because you pinged to all the towers, and they'll know your last location, so destroying the SIM card doesn't really do anything. Maybe from a plausible deniability standpoint, because you don't have it. Oh, did I spell that right? Maybe. I mean, but also Mr. Robot is a TV show. The RAM destroying. Even if he did, it's the fear is that there could be information hanging inside RAM, but we've already seen and read that RAM is just a bunch of transistors, and once you remove it, once you properly shut down, if you really want to, you can remove it. You don't have to. Nothing gets left, especially if you shut it down properly. This is why Buzzkill is nice, but they used real life events. I don't know of any cold boot attack that has been used in the wild, but I could be wrong. I've looked into documentation and indications that upon shutdown, the data residing in the RAM is overwritten. However, it does not go into any detail how it does this. And actually, Tails recommends you don't do anything. One of the most important things is you don't do the same activity in Tails at the same time. I think the character was uber paranoid. Well, yeah, he's schizophrenic. You find I don't know, spoiler alert, but you find that out at the end. He's got tried killing himself or something. If I remember correctly. Yeah, one purpose at a time. If you use Tails sessions for more than one purpose at a time, an adversary could link your different activities together. So your best option is to use Tails and then completely nuke it and then boot it up again and vice versa. For example, if you log into different accounts, you're correct, sir. Yeah. If you log into different accounts, the same website in a single Tails session, the website could determine that the two accounts are used by the same person. This is because websites can tell when two accounts are using the same Tor circuit. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tor resets like these circuits every like 10 minutes, but I could be wrong. I think it changes the circuits like I think it changes them every 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. If there is malware persistent on the system, then yes, it'll be able to interfere with the memory wiping process. If malicious process spawns many copies of itself in memory, it can prevent the process which initiate memory wiping from the executing, essentially causing the computer to hang. This is an extremely simple attack called a fork bomb, which fills up the system with process tables and prevents new processes from forming. Even an unplugged USB stick will not kick the computer out of its frozen state, and only holding it down, the power button, can power it off. The malware doesn't need to root privilege either. It can do this as a regular user. It's not very likely that a threat though, that because it would have to be tightly coordinated with physical raid against you, which that would be because it would have to be tightly unlikely and would be much easier to prevent you from pulling out the USB stick. Do you think whatever computer you use would keep logs, like Windows machine you boot the USB stick from? Sure, yeah. I mean, if it's susceptible to like some form of malware, it could memory. So like from what I understand, like how assembly works and like lower level malware works, I could be wrong. So malware experts, let me know. It can move information. I don't see why not. The likelihood probably not, but you could put a USB in. This could be infected with malware, and it could save it somewhere or send it off. I'm not saying it's impossible. Tails isn't perfect. I mean, but I think it does enough mitigation that people don't have to. People should worry more about their OPSEC than anything. However, and Tails could be configured in the future to resist such as now service attacks from memory. Is there any way to recover wiped memory? In theory, yes, but not because the memory can be recovered after it's wiped. On some systems, the wiping fails. This is usually not a big deal because it only saves a few extra seconds of time. On a very old computers, it can save a minute at most. If wiping fails and your computer has DDR3 or DDR4 memory, just make sure it stays off for 5 seconds or so, and the memory will fade naturally. If you have an older DDR2, wait a few minutes just to be sure. If you're asking whether or not a cold boot attack successfully erased memory can recover previous content, then I would say absolutely not. Not with 21st century technology, at least. Interesting. Cold boot attacks against VRAM. There is, however, a different problem regarding recovering memory and video memory, or VRAM. VRAM in most video cards, usually DDR3 or GDDR4 or 5. GDDR4 and GDDR5 are based on DDR3, but optimized for higher bandwidth, thus graphical tasks. Because these are based on DDR3, similar cold boot techniques against them likely apply. Tails currently cannot wipe video memory on shutdown. Cold boot attacks against video memory are possible, and they follow reconstructing frame buffers from when the system was powered on, along with the calculations of the GPU was making at the time. If your system uses an integrated graphics, i.e. the GPU is contained entirely in the CPU and not a discrete graphics card, which I'm kind of aware of, which is kind of interesting, the cold boot attacks against the video memory on Tails then becomes much harder. This is mostly a problematic for people with discrete GPUs, there are a few possible solutions to this, other than simply waiting a few seconds for the memory to naturally fade. But Tails has not yet implemented it. I'm actually working on a few of them in my free time. It may contribute to the Tails. Otherwise, people are well off. So it's not unknown and won't necessarily be an issue forever. Honestly, what is the risk? Honestly, I would not worry about the possibility of memory wiping failing or being defeated on Tails. Modern RAM DDR3 and 4 needs to be cooled down to more than negative 30 degrees Celsius in order to retain any information for more than a couple of seconds. The Tails memory wiping features is there primarily for old computers using DDR2 or, God forbid, ancient DDR. So if Billy was here, memory where you power it off the machine and walk away. Someone can walk up to it 3 minutes later and recover a significant portion of the information on it. Even in that worst case scenario, most DDR2 memory fades in under a minute. With modern memory, there would have to be right there, freezer spray in hand, with a computer ripped open and equipment next to them as you shut down the system down for them to have any chance of recovering memory. And that would be even, and that would be even if you didn't wipe the RAM. As long as you have DDR3 or 4 memory, you are able to shut down the system several seconds before they get their hands on it, and then you are completely safe. Cold boot attacks are a risk if you either have DDR2 or DDR3, DDR1 if you have DDR2 or DDR memory, or 2, your computer is taken from you while it's still on, and your adversary has ample time to prepare to freeze the memory sticks while the system is still running. All technical details aside, how should you defend yourself? If an adversary is about to gain physical access to your computer, you must power it off. There is no way around it. If they take the computer and you're not able to get it shut down, they will be able to do whatever they want with it. But if you manage to yank the USB stick out before that it happens, then you're completely safe from the threat of cold boot attacks. Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. It seems like modern PCs are fine, and RAM. What up, C? I2B? So, please don't mess up the software target attacks and hardware target attacks. Oh, cold boot is a second one. No software is able to protect against it, but it's based on a hardware behavior. The only thing you can do with relocating in-memory stored private data constantly and wiping out memory is used for a previous storage, but it will not save you. It will only make it harder to extract from memory dump. Interesting. Tails and Tor, other tools for safeguarding online activities. I think it's an interesting thought. This is why even like running Tails from a virtual machine is probably advised. Again, it's advised not to do this because it could theoretically not be only be forensically investigated. This is why CubesOS doesn't recommend it, even using Hunix for that reason, because Hunix, even in CubesOS, even disposable virtual machines aren't considered like as safe as Tails, if that makes sense.
RAM that you can break, and that you're still vulnerable to the other hardware stuff that you can't touch, but at least you can get rid of anything in that temporary RAM. That's where you were doing everything with the OS. Now, I also recommend ripping out speakers, microphones, and cameras from the computer. Now, people say, oh, you can just turn it off, turn on a little slider, but I don't trust software to turn something off. I trust physically removing things. And believe it or not, you can use speakers as a microphone. There's a way to do that, so I might as well just remove.
Speakers and microphones are built on the same basic principle. Both use a diaphragm, a coil that convert electrics into sound. Yeah. But it would have to be compromised. So having good security would prevent this. I mean, is anything hackable? Sure. I mean, that's kind of like a esoteric. I mean, Cubes solves this pretty well. It doesn't allow you. And it would have to override Cubes' security model. You have to explicitly allow it. So I think it's completely okay to have a microphone. Now, this is more of a Linux thing, and Graphene OS thing. If you have a system that has strict permissions, and these permissions can't be overridden, obviously because they're written, it's less of a likely of a threat to spend your time and waste on removing these arbitrary things. Because you can never, even if you, let's say hypothetically, like do this, but you plug in a microphone later, that could be compromised. You don't know. You would have to physically never use these things in general, and that's probably, from a attack perspective, a good thing. If you plan on never using these things, but people will do it, and then they'll put external mics and external hardware. But you're still taking the risk. If it just like these physical switches, blah blah blah. I read an interesting article and paper on someone who talked about this. They're like, physical switches don't matter. They're kind of like, if they turn off, but your system's compromised and the malware or like the malicious intent is sitting there and just waiting for it to see a specific signal, like a connection of speakers, and you essentially done nothing. You would have to keep it off like pretty much at all times, which isn't really good for convenience in a sense. But it's stuff like this is never convenient.
Now, there's a company out there that makes computers where they have physical switches that cut the power off to the certain components of the computer if you're not using it. I would love to get one of these in the studio at some point, but they are fairly expensive. And I trust physically disconnecting something over software saying it's off. But the cheap way for me is just ripping it out of the computer.
Yeah, but that's because, in a sense, Linux isn't as locked down. I mean, you can have good secure software that does have mitigation built into it that would prevent this. Saying you don't trust software is like just, it's kind of blindly saying it. That'd be like saying I don't trust encryption because it's software based. Even though encryption is mathematically proven to be very effective and efficient at what it does, but saying because, like, I don't know. I think people, again, go to very extreme hyperbolics. They're like, well, I don't trust the software. Well, you're using software. You trust software that it has been vetted and has worked for, a very long time. And if you look at it, if you pull out the scope of like encryption, and when it comes to like, yes, a microphone and a speaker, that is an attack surface, just like Bluetooth. But most of the time, people are very fingerprintable. So doesn't really matter. It all comes back down again. I'm always going to say like a dead horse. It's just good OPSEC. Good OPSEC beats everything. I think there isn't really a bad reason to like remove this, but I think it's somewhat theatrical to a certain degree to remove like your microphone and your camera. In general, because they again, I believe Facebook exploited VLC. They assisted the FBI in hacking a child predator by developing a hacking tool to gather evidence. A California man known as Brian Keller was arrested for harassing and extorting young people through various online platforms, including Facebook. A new collaboration between Facebook assisted the FBI gathering evidence against Pred. They worked with a third-party security firm to develop a hacking exploit that allowed law enforcement to access the information necessary for the investigation. This action raised ethical questions, etc. The exploit utilized a zero-day vulnerability in the privacy-focused operating system's Tails, which was designed to protect user anonymity. Facebook spokesman stated that the decision was made due to the severity of the situation needed to protect the victims. The case highlights... I thought it was VLC, yeah. Clever with cybersecurity experts zero to exploit to Tails operating system, which helped. I thought it was VLC. Could have been wrong though. I know they exploited Tails, and it was Facebook involved, but that was interesting.
And that's pretty much it for the Ghost project setup. Now we're going to move on to the next one. Now this project is called the Headless Hitman. So I'm going to be using a headless operating system on a Raspberry Pi 02W, but I'm going to be using this Chrome Uno. This is not a laptop. This is just a monitor, keyboard, microphone, and speaker, and mouse, all in one. Well, I'm going to be doing some modifications to it. I'm going to be removing the speakers and the microphone. First thing I'm going to do is remove the speakers. There's one on the right and one on the left. I'm going to remove the one on the right first. Now the speaker on the left is a little harder to get out. The wire is kind of tough.
Why not just cut them up?
Underneath the battery, so you're going to see me here rip out all of that. I know I said this before, but the reason why I'm removing the speakers is that it could be used as a microphone. Speaking of microphones, on the top of the Pro View on the board here, you're going to see two connections here for the microphone. So rip these out. Now on the Pro View, the microphone and speakers have been removed and now ready to go with the project. Now you're going to need a micro SD card with the operating system on the Raspberry Pi 02.
It has all my stickers on it, guys.
And if you're going to be doing it on the Raspberry Pi 5, so let me show you how to do that. Now you need to use something called Raspberry Pi Imager. I'm going to link.
I mean, you can just use DD like a real man.
It's not strong enough to really handle a regular OS. And I was able to get Parrot Security OS to work after figuring out the login because everything running in the background. Because the command to wipe it out works. The things like Pi 5s is a lot better because it's just stronger. It can handle the full operating system, which is nice. But with the 2s, you can just snap it in half and walk away. Now, I tested a couple of varieties of this. It's just stronger. It can handle the full operating system, which is nice. But with the 2s, you can just snap it in half and walk away. Now, I tested a couple of varieties.
This man just loves destroying technology and throwing it in.
This, and the one that I'm showing right now with the Raspberry Pi 2 with the battery is really cool. This has the headless once again. So my idea with this setup is to run it with another computer. But you can do it without it. I mean, you can just run it the way it is right now and use the terminal for everything. But I want to have a secondary computer where I send commands to that device and have that device do all the work in reconnaissance or back testing, and then send a kill code to wipe everything on the device. But if you're newer and you want a more GUI-based setup, I recommend the Raspberry Pi 5. I would definitely upgrade to the 8 gigabytes of RAM and download Parrot Security or Kali. Both work fine with this setup. This setup's really nice because you can fit your computer in your pocket. And the Pro View is more like a decoy because it's not a computer, but it looks like a laptop. Not a lot of people know that this thing even exists. And we made our modifications so it helps with your privacy while you're using it as well.
Why not put a Pico Zero in it, inside it? I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I would say that your best option is just to have not only just a good online presence. Actually putting time and effort into understanding the software that you're using. I think that would be even better. I mean, darknet market vendors exist all over the world, and they kind of exist probably in one of the most hostile environments, especially with like the government probably looking for them, or like, terrible people. And they probably do it in a very simple way. They use Tails. They go to their local coffee shop. They look like a normal person. They do their thing. They don't share any personal information about them, or they make it up as they go. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you're making up a story. And then they move on. A burner laptop is not cheap. But if you have good OPSEC, you don't have to go through all these extremes. Tails is very efficient, and it seems like it's got some mitigation against Kobudu talks, which is a good thing. Hunix, if I had to pick 3 operating systems to run daily, if I was a darknet banana bread vendor, I'd probably use Hunix as my daily driver, for certain stuff within Cubes. I would use Cubes OS, essentially. And I would use Unix for like some things, like hey, I want to, like purchase the ingredients to make banana bread. And then I would use Tails for only one task. And I would pair it with Buzzkill, so that if someone grabbed my laptop, I'm good. I don't think there's a lot of crazy things you got to do to be relatively private online, and I think people overcomplicate it and overthink it. Because if it was, there's probably even better OPSEC people out there that have even way more chill ways of doing this. Because they're like, because I think the more layers you add, the more complex it becomes, you're going to make mistakes. Just no personal information, and you can't. Tails is a good portion of Tails is. Not Tails. A good portion of Tor is federal honeypots. So it's not surprising that it's attracted so many, because they want people to slip up. Most very bad adversaries, government, state, nation state exploiters, or like hackers or whatever. They kind of have an unlimited amount of time and money, and they can make as many mistakes as they want, because their country's not going to do anything to them. But you only need to make one. So you have to always keep that in mind. And if you're in a very serious situation where you need to be relatively more private, your best bet is actually to kind of blend in. I don't want to say gray man, because that sounds very cringe, but it's essentially what you want to do. Just go to a normal place. Just go to a normal place and install Linux and use it like a normal person. And when you want to do you sell your banana bread online, go to a coffee shop. Don't do it from your house in case there is a leak. And move on. They're going to be like, oh, it was the it was the white guy with a hat. You know what I mean? And pick busy, cheap coffee places, like coffee places that don't have like cameras, but they're busy, because then it looks, they're not even gonna remember you. Or pick a busy coffee major chain where it's like normal. You look normal. You want to look normal. That's the best way I say do it.
Like to try in the future is to SSH into the headless one to see if I can actually do the setup. And I want to do it. I'm pretty sure it will work, where I can remote into the headless and then have that get a hitman and then set the code to kill that device. And that's pretty much it for this project. So I'm going to move on to the last one here. Instead, the separate host computer does all the work. I remotely view this screen and use a wireless HDMI link, and I control it with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse from a different location. The key is separation. My device is only acting as an interface. The host machine handles the processing, the storage, and network activity. This is a very simple setup. In this video, I'm using a wireless HDMI system. I have shown this on the channel before when I did my DIY screen grab. What you are seeing in the background is a proof of concept. I have a piece of plastic where I mounted a display, a battery, and a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse.
I know what kind of car he drives now. Ruined!
We test this inside of my car. And
Terrible OPSEC.
in the studio, and I'm getting connectivity, but it is a little laggy, but I am, again, inside my car, and I'm using a very cheap Bluetooth mouse and keyboard. I'm assuming if I had a better keyboard and mouse, I'd probably have even better range and capabilities. With the screen sharing with the wireless HDMI is really great. Now, I plan on building off of this concept in the future. During my last live stream, I kind of experimented with a portable monitor and a Bluetooth keyboard. I'm going to be putting it in the shell of one of those old laptops that I got, and I'm going to make it look like a laptop. I'm going to make it dress it up nice, but the screen I had currently is kind of broken, as you're going to see in a minute, but the proof of concept even shows here, where it's going to look like a computer and a laptop, a normal laptop, but it's only a screen being projected from the host computer and a mouse and keyboard that's connected to that computer. So it's like a computer, but it doesn't exist. It's just a monitor and input device. It's a really good concept, but the exposing factor is that you need to put these implants in and set up the Bluetooth connection. I'm also going to experiment with some hacking.
So you're going to add more complexity where other things can be exploited. Guys, we're going to exploit VNC. Or what? I don't know how you're streaming to it. I2P mentioned, base guys. We love I2P. I2P is more of an intranet, so. Do I set Windows hello with my favorite? That's funny. I followed these steps, but I installed Windows. What a Chad thing to say. Hey, it's our boy. You make video about Pi-hole? We found out that Nothing Busto has terrible OPSEC. He has publicly commented on a video. Now we know. Drug dealer. I spotted a. I need to find this and comment on it. How did? But Tails is pretty good. For hardware security, consider an open source firmware laptop with MER disabled, such as System76 or Peersm. I wouldn't do Peersm because they suck, but System76 maybe. Yeah, that'd be a good, smart. But I've heard they don't do. I could be wrong. They don't do core boot so well. This video explained why right to repair will always be alien to politicians. Yeah, I guess. Right to repair is pretty based and cool. Aren't there concerns with the Raspberry Pi being made in the U.S. with a proprietary Broadcom chip that could have an NSA backdoor? That's retarded. I just discovered your channel. I'm into half the video and took a look at your channel. I must say, I don't know what I like more. Your aesthetic, which really keeps my attention. The topics I was specifically looking for, and how much information you give for free. Thank you so much. If you want to preserve your privacy and you need to start by flashing your TV with a custom firmware. Ever wonder why TVs are so cheap now? Oh yeah, that's good. This is pretty well known that our TVs are listening to us. Every secure system, give the adequate firewall. They'll bored to tears watch me sing 116 hours in a PoE. Great video. So sliding privacy shutter won't work to hide the webcam. If you got software that can turn it off and block it, sure. It should be fine. Funny how nothing can be trusted. Is this an old video from before the ransom collapse and a re-upload or something? I am triggered by the suggestions, throw away RAM sticks. I need a safe space to go process that information. RAM is fine. I have a solution for the Pi 02. I have set up some Sugar Pi battery. I have a Kali on 0. Ran into the same issue. Like I said, these people are really chain linking a lot of things. Chain linking a lot of things together. Here, where she was working on ThinkPads, she made a comment. They were essentially framework computers, but cheaper. Convenience is the Trojan horse, taking everyone's privacy away. Definitely need a privacy bill of rights. Yeah, that's true. I think there should be some legislation. They can say every Wednesday there is a 4-hour tour long on file that X took time was downloaded. Okay, don't know what the fuck that guy's talking about. Just commenting so I get more likes. Beyond using ThinkPads, you can use core boot based. The best thing you can do is acquire old computers off the shelf. Roadside Center Intel Management came out in 2006. Find machines older than this, strip it down, HD mics, accessory to. These people just don't like technology, I guess. Script Kitty. Tell these people about Palantir. It doesn't matter. Ghostwriter, I've been your sub for 5 years. Your content meant a lot to me. I'd love to receive a Lily Go TC as a gift. It would honestly mean a lot. Please gift me. There's always someone that's like, please gift me. Mr. Beast probably did that. It's probably his fault. In cybersecurity, this is called a zero trust. Know that you can't trust anything. This applies beyond Well, a zero trust architecture doesn't mean it's immune to any vulnerabilities. It definitely can be fucked. 100%. LibreBoot your laptop. I don't think LibreBoot gets as much updates anymore. It's probably not smart. CoreBoot would probably be better, even though it's slightly more proprietary. I think Faraday bags are relative. I think airplane mode has been proven to work, and Faraday bags are kind of useless. Much love, bro. Here for more than a minute. Thanks. RAM holds memory of what used to be on it. Are you insane? The U.S. needs to push back against the Patriot Act. Yeah, I agree with that. I had to cringe once because I saw the word anonymous sticker calling it a burner laptop and a ghost laptop. Doesn't make any difference. Also, absolutely no mention of Faraday bags for that burner and your personal-ish settings in your pocket, making pins the entire time, nor of cash payments, all the useless if not paying cash, and a mask. My SP is a random hotel analog. Your mama's house. Windows made antivirus not long ago called the Windows Defender. It can be 3 to 5 years only. I'm not reading all that. Good OPSEC negates. This is the best comment right here. Good OPSEC negates the need of 90% of this. I have a question. What Tails is better than hardened super minimal, for example, Alpine Linux? I ask because I don't feel like this complexity is needed for an operating system. Also because graphics on Linux is so complicated that is auto-flagged for me that understanding of Tails, by the way, good for channel person. Good luck disposing of RAM after he with RAM prices. The RAM price comments are true. I tend to agree. Yeah, I tend to agree, but if you buy a burner notebook and have a homeless person buy it for you with cash, you go to the coffee, connect it to the internet, you can still be caught. Even if the coffee shop doesn't have cameras, someone close by, they'll see, drive by, 1984, just look to yeah, whatever. For a project, Parasite, I think you called it, with the remote setup, I would recommend doing the best stick with the SSH, blah, blah, blah. You're out of your mind. You know RAM is volatile. Once it's not powered on, RAM clears itself. You're just plugging it. Also, why would you use RF-based things for anything? Also, did you forget about MAC address? Have you ever heard of nested virtualization? People who listen to the bloke will end up with a case if they break the law using these methods. Just write a script that does everything for you. That's not smart either. Or better yet, something compiled and make it execute on a library computer. That's even more dumb. After you leave, if you want to use your own computer, be prepared to make some serious modifications or get a Chromebook. You can disable Intel management on those. Swap to firmware. Let's get something out of the way. As an educational video, it's lukewarm at best. I can't believe I wasted my time. Thank you, random anime man. This is why they inflate the prices of RAM, not the AI. In case someone wonders what they do when they sound or a mic, just use the cheap wired headphones when you need it. But you're plugging it in, so if you're compromised at some point, you're fucked. They sell kits that are basically just a monitor, keyboard, trackpad, and laptop form. ThinkPad, portable dock. I feel like that'd be a more better option than getting a laptop. Not really. You'll be fine. All you gotta do, really, in hindsight, is just I mean, in my opinion, all you have to do is just have good OPSEC. Modern capitalist business, oh my god, making good stuff. The thing about stuff like Intel management or various other meta processes is that it comes in and out that can still be analyzed. And by that, I mean what comes in and out of the greater system. 666 is like, oh wait, this will be fun. Modifying it too much externally or carrying a Raspberry Pi means you can't travel with it without raising suspicion or disabling the mic speakers. I mean, like, how do you know your Pis aren't compromised? How do you know there's nothing baked in, pun intended? It starts with the silicon. Factories are allowed to integrate modifications at their sole discretion without disclosure, since the 80s at least. No news here. Moving on. I like when people just make up. I should just start doing that. I should just make up schizophrenic takes and just put them all over the internet. 10 minutes after flipping laptop components, 5 minutes of actual explanation spreading across the entire video. Waste of my video. It is amazing to think that privacy exists as a right, but it's blatantly ignored. It doesn't actually. It exists in your head that it's a right, but it's not really. You see, the ISP knows everything, no matter what you do, even before you connect to a VPN. What if your VPN was on the router level? What if they blocked the device? That might work. Your VPN is just a transfer of trust, though. The only winning move is to not play. Just shut it off, get it off, innovate yourself, and have privacy. I disagree with that. Actually, still is. You're constantly being tracked by camera. Yeah, that's whatever. Gotta expand your options. Consider applying the same measures. Like, people doing all these off-grid stuff is just very silly. They're like, get off the internet. That just sounds like complying. And complying is gay. Damn you GNOME boxes. I would say the best option is just good OPSEC. Read stuff on OPSEC, and that's what you got to do. Don't overthink it. Because if you do, then you'll make oopsies. And you don't want to do that. Alright guys, thanks for joining. Appreciate everyone stopping by. Very based of you, very cool. And don't forget to think about what your favorite bug is. All bugs are cool. And you should leave an interesting bug fact. Don't forget to walk your snail. And don't forget to leave comments for the YouTube algorithm, so YouTube knows I'm a real person and I enjoy all their policies. I don't hate anything about them. I'll see you.